So I'm going to suggest that we move, not lose any of those questions, but that we move into the group discussions. And so 3 ideas for the group discussions. What are your initial reactions to the action plan from a youth work perspective? What do you see are the opportunities here? Funding has already been raised, so obviously that is one of the perceived challenges, but what support do you think is needed in the sector to help move this forward and be part of the movement for change that we're talking about? Welcome back. Sorry, that's so abrupt. I hope you've been having good discussions. Well, welcome back into the room, and it's great to see you all actually in the room rather than have the PowerPoint. I've been following your discussions on the Jamboard, and just so much coming through. I've been really happy to see so many opportunities coming through, and more opportunities than challenges, but then seeing challenges at the same time. But what I'm going to do now is I'll invite one person from each group just to feed back in 2 minutes each. It's not going to be easy, I can see from all those stickies that went onto the Jamboards, but can I start with group 1? I don't know who wants to feed back. This was your group, Kirsten.
Yes, I'm happy to feed back on behalf of the group if folk want me to, unless anyone else wants to chip in. Okay, I'll take that as a green light.
Yeah, I hear silence here.
Okay, well, we had a wonderful discussion, and I think we were just getting going when it was time to stop, and I'm sure the other groups will say the same thing. So in terms of initial reactions, there was consensus around the need to include how good is our community learning and development in the plan. There was also concerns about no explicit references to residential outdoor learning opportunities, but there was also need for the plan to reference community learning and development values, ethics and competencies to provide that equivalence with the GTC Scotland standards as well. In terms of opportunities, there were loads of really great suggestions. I think that one of the sort of top line one is to recognise that there are different levels of community. We are part of local, national and international communities. But also the fact that CLD workers are doing LFS already. It's part of the everyday for many, many of us. Looking at this idea of changing the learning dynamics between learners and educators by using the various settings that we find ourselves in, so our outdoor settings, our dining halls, all sorts of opportunities there in terms of changing that dynamic. One of the things that came across was this idea of a case study to show what a sustainable learning setting looks like. So what does that look like? How does everyone in that setting interact with each other? But very great point made at the end by Nikki around this idea that small scale changes are what is needed to affect that bigger picture. We're facing big challenges, but it's the little things that matter. In terms of challenges and support, resources, funding, staff capacity, professional learning, and lots of sort of ideas around this idea of engaging with other practitioners to share learning, and looking at some of the structures around, for example, facilities management companies in terms of how we interact to bring that about. But we'll pull all these thoughts together and we'll share them with you. I know there's a lot there that I've missed out. So thank you so much to my group.
Great, thank you, Kirsten, for being short and sharp. And I think group 2, was that you, Naomi?
Yes, yeah, that was our group. Yeah, I'm happy to feed back, but yeah, feel free to jump in if I do miss anything. Yeah, we had a really interesting discussion. Could barely fit all the sticky notes on the Jamboard. Initial reactions from the action plan were that it was very ambitious, but needs to be backed up with funding. A lot of the action plan included what the youth work sector feel like they're doing already. The group also felt like there needed to be a stronger focus on community connections and making sure that young people have more agency in the process. There are also some concerns around the portal and feelings that maybe it would be using valuable resources that might be better directed towards more direct work and giving children and young people more agency. There were lots of ideas around opportunities, so making sure that we listen to young people, highlighting that young people are really interested in action and governance, having their voices heard, being involved in decision-making processes, making sure that social justice is at the forefront of learning for sustainability. We spoke a lot about more joined up working being required, everyone having a part to play, everyone recognising their obligations. Some more opportunities included enhanced CLD professional education as well, so everyone understands what their obligations are. Feeling like everyone's part of a collective response as well, and through that using creative methods, for example through the arts, and being active rather than being passive. The group also felt like the youth work sector maybe had more opportunities to reflect and respond to young people's needs and wants in comparison maybe to more formal education settings where they might be more restricted by the curriculum. And then in terms of some of the challenges, a lot of the group felt like they're already doing everything they can and they feel quite stretched. There was recognition that some groups are working in silos as well, or some individuals don't always feel equipped to address some of the issues. We also spoke a little bit about case studies as well, which I think Group 1 also touched on. So the idea that maybe some case studies feel a little bit out of reach and a bit beyond capability. So celebrating those small wins and those small changes, making it seem achievable for the sector. And then we also spoke about just some of the really small logistical challenges, the practical things, like, for example, being able to drive a minibus to take a youth group out to do an activity. So sometimes it's not just about the big things, but also the really small kind of details of practically supporting young people to engage in LFS. I'll stop there. We covered a lot in the group, but those are some of the highlights.
Fantastic. I'll swiftly move on to Group 3. I don't know who was facilitating that. Was that you, Julie?
Yeah, that was me. I'm happy to go through it, but if anybody else wants to, please stop me, put your hand up, just jump in, because I know you know, I don't want to just go for it without anybody else in the group getting a chance to. So please do just jump in. We had loads of interesting conversations. We talked a lot about how this links to broader community settings. We talked around connections with schools sometimes working really well, but sometimes connections with secondary schools in particular, like they can rely on like a champion or an advocate in the school, and it can be difficult to get in the door sometimes. We talked about how important partnerships are going to be, particularly with schools, and within schools, how important their partnerships are with their external contractors, their canteens, their school trip providers, you know, whoever it might be, who's working with that school and how on board are they and how on board can they be, particularly in terms of facilities, you know, schools that are kind of governed by facility management companies. Can be the same for some community centres as well. It can be hard for change to happen in that type of setting where there's the different levels of kind of building ownership and management, that kind of thing. We talked about definitions and the definitions kind of just transition and how easy some things are to connect with young people, but often some things are difficult to connect and link with young people, and what does that mean to them? We talked about the Just Transition funding and the opportunities that there will be to have young people kind of at the centre of those kind of programmes. But again, really important to be able to get them on board. And then challenges, we talked about how schools will be judged. Will it be in how good is our school and those kind of frameworks? Will inspectors be looking for it, that kind of thing? We talked about potential crossovers between different third sector organisations and difficulty kind of if we have the same organisations bidding for funding and that kind of thing. But also funding being key. We talked about the need for exemplification. So what does a sustainable building or setting look like? That will be very different across the country. So is there kind of benchmarks? Is there steps? You know, is there different exemplifications in different places? Is there those kind of small scale changes that can be made kind of in the next few years to take people on that journey? And similarly, the conversations around case studies as well. So again, really keen to capture, you know, what this looks like across Scotland, and obviously putting that play out there. People, please, if you're interested in being part of that, please get in touch. And the rest of the group, if there's anything else, add in.
Thanks very much. And I think that message that the case studies don't have to be perfect, but actually what it's all about is learning. And so, you know, sharing successes but challenges as well, and in case studies is the way to go. And last but not least, I'll hand over, Liz, your group. I don't know if you...
if anybody else would like to share, you're very welcome to, but I'm happy to give it a go and just like chip in if I've missed anything. So a lot of similar like things came up. Our conversation focused a lot on I suppose like what YouthWork's already doing and how it relates to formal education, but I'll just go over a few things. So some sort of positives and negatives about the action plan, that it's really good to see sort of the recognition of outdoor learning and a re-emerging focus on sort of sustainable behaviours in practice, and that having this action plan is really helpful for the sort of youth participation, youth voice agenda, and trying to, you know, show how it's augmented by different government policies. And it was really good to see young people from rural areas, a broad variety of young people included in the research that was undertaken. But some sort of not so good things about the plan was that there was a lack of narrative, as we discussed earlier, around sort of lifelong and life-wide learning and how that fits. And we talked about the potential of, you know, LFS being particularly like multidisciplinary and family learning being a really important part of, you know, the idea of being a movement, and that's not really reflected in the plan, as was mentioned in the plenary earlier. And that the sustainability sort of focuses a lot more on the environmental side of things than the sort of wider LFS sort of social justice, human rights approach that is, you know, deeply embedded in it, and that's a challenge, and also that links to maybe a lack of understanding or reflection on the importance of the role that youth work plays in LFS and what we're doing already, because there's a huge synergy between you know, sort of global, between like social justice and participative pedagogies in LFS and what we do, you know, how we do youth work and what our youth work pedagogy is. And you know, that maybe there needs to be more recognition of that we're doing it already, and resource put into that, because the sector's extremely stretched, and you know, there are a lot of priorities and action plans and policy agendas that youth work is being expected to step into when there's, you know, significant cuts to budgets all across both the local authorities and the third sector. We're really stretched, and maybe this action plan or what comes from it and the funding available could be an opportunity to recognise the role that what YouthWork's already doing in this space. We also talked a bit about the, you know, so there are so many opportunities, but there really needs to be resourcing. And oh god, 11:31, sorry, I'll be really quick. And then you know, because of the different role of like the GTCS standards and so on, there's maybe a lack of parity between what teachers are getting in terms of their learning around LFS and what youth workers are getting, but we talked about opportunities within the clear links with the COD competencies and the youth work NOS, and opportunities within like refreshing the youth work induction to see how we can build learning for sustainability better into those initial training pathways. But again, that conversation about funding and trying to be realistic and trying to be recognised for what we're doing already was came back. I definitely missed things. Is there anything else that the group wants to chip in with?
Thank you so much, Liz. And just a recognition that these Jamboards will stay open. If there's anything else that you or anybody wants to add, then please do. But also that we'll be sharing the Jamboard. So we'll shortly after this session take a PDF of what was gathered during the session, and that will be circulated to you all. It will also be shared with the leadership group, and as you heard, YouthLink are part of the leadership group, and Learning for Sustainability Scotland is too. And I know that Lucia wanted to see the outcomes of this meeting, and of course they'll be shared with her and everybody at Education Scotland through Julie. So thank you for all of that. But I also hope that you found this session useful for your organisations. The call to action that was mentioned earlier is going to happen towards the end of September. The current date that we have is in the last week of September. And this is a call to action for everyone. So I hope that we will be able to share that with all of you, and that you take the learning from today into your organisations in whatever way is appropriate for your organisation. And just to flag up that YouthLink and ourselves are actually hosting another event at the end of September, which is going to be more practically focused and is for practitioners. So, you know, that we will share information about that. And I hope that you will encourage folk within your organisation and beyond to participate in that too. So I know we've gone a few minutes over time. On behalf of YouthLink and ourselves, just to say thank you so much for joining us. Please keep in touch. As I say, we will be in touch with you immediately after this, but I know professional learning has come out as a big need in the sector, and you know, happy YouthLink Scotland and ourselves to work on what this might look like, and any other opportunities for support going forward that will fit into this. So I'm saying goodbye on behalf of YouthLink. I know, Liz, that you've put that into your into the chat. I don't know whether you'd like to say any final words yourself, and Naomi.
Yeah, just don't want to take up too much time as I know we're running over, but yeah, just thanks again to all the contributions and all the really interesting discussions today. I put the link in the chat to the event that Betsy mentioned happening at the end of the month if you want to sign up to that, or if you want to share it with any other colleagues who maybe couldn't make it along today. And yeah, we're really keen to make sure that your views are represented, and we're advocating for the sector through the Learning for Sustainability Leadership Group. So please do get in touch if you do want us to share anything in that group, or if there's any other training or opportunities that might be useful for us to be able to support you in your practice. So thanks, everyone.
And a final thanks to our presenters today from University of Dundee and of course from Education Scotland. Thank you so much for really prompting all the discussion that we just had so brilliantly.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and see you soon. Bye.